All right, let's talk about CSS. We're going to really break down how it works under the hood so you can finally stop fighting with it.
You know the feeling, right? You write a simple line of CSS. You want a button to turn blue and it just stays gray. It can feel so random, like the browser has a mind of its own. But here's the thing, it's not random at all. The browser isn't ignoring you, it's following a very strict and, thankfully, very predictable set of rules.
The whole idea behind this is actually pretty simple and elegant. Just think of it like this. Your HTML is the skeleton. It gives the page its structure. The CSS? Well, that's the clothes. It's all the visual styling. The entire point is to keep these two things separate. Doing that makes your code so much cleaner, way more flexible, and a heck of a lot easier to manage.
So if you really want to stop wrestling with CSS, you have to start thinking like the browser thinks. You have to understand how it makes decisions about which styles to apply, especially when there are conflicts. It all comes down to 3 core rules. And honestly, if you get these 3 rules, you basically get CSS.
Now, this flowchart might look a little intense at first glance, but it's really just the browser's playbook. This is the exact decision-making process it follows every single time. And it really just boils down to a simple hierarchy for sorting out style conflicts. First, it considers inheritance, then it looks at specificity, and finally, it falls back on the source order.
Okay, so that middle one, specificity, that is absolutely the most crucial one to understand. The best way to think of it is like a points game. Every single CSS rule gets a score. An inline style right in the HTML, that's the king, worth 1,000 points. An ID selector is next up at 100. A class gets you 10 points, and a plain old tag selector gets just 1. When 2 rules are fighting over an element, the one with the higher score wins. Simple as that.
So what happens if there's a tie? You know, if 2 rules have the exact same specificity score? Well, that's where the cascade part of CSS comes in. It's simple. The last rule defined in the style sheet is the one that wins. And then finally, there's inheritance. That's just the natural way some styles, like font color, just flow down from a parent element to its children, unless you specifically tell them to do something different.
Okay, so those are the rules of the game. Now let's talk about the tools you actually play with. We're talking about selectors. This is how you point your finger at exactly which HTML elements you want to style.
Your 2 main workhorses here are class and ID, and understanding the difference is fundamental. A class, which you target with a dot, is meant for reusable styles. Think of a dot warning text class that you might want to apply to lots of different paragraphs. An ID, on the other hand, which you target with a hash sign, is for a one-of-a-kind element, like a hashtag main header. It's meant to be used only once on any given page.
So let's look at a quick practical example. This selector p.special is really specific. It's not just targeting any paragraph, and it's not targeting any element that happens to have the special class. It is only looking for a paragraph element that also has the class special applied to it. Only that specific element will get the green text and the solid red border.
And boom, here's what you get. The browser reads that CSS rule, it finds the matching p class special tag in the HTML, and it applies the styles. It's a perfect cause and effect relationship.
All right, so we know how to target elements and apply styles, but how does the browser actually handle layout and spacing? Well, it all comes down to one of the most foundational concepts in CSS, the box model.
This diagram explains it all. Every single thing on a web page, a paragraph, an image, a heading, you name it, is treated by the browser as a rectangular box. Right at the very center is your actual content. Working your way out from there, you've got padding, which is the space inside the box. Then you have the border itself. And finally, on the very outside, you have the margin, which is the empty space that pushes other boxes away from it.
And here it is in a real-world scenario. The green area is the parent list element. Inside it, you've got the 2 list items, the gray boxes. You can clearly see how the margin on those list items creates that space between them, and the padding gives the text inside some breathing room from its border. It really is all just boxes inside of other boxes.
Now, CSS hasn't just been sitting still. It has evolved, and we now have features that fundamentally change how we build websites. Let's look at 2 of the biggest superpowers: variables and media queries.
First up, CSS variables, or as they're officially called, custom properties. This is an absolute game changer for maintainability. Instead of typing the same color code in 20 different places, you define it once as a variable, say -main brand color. Then you just use that variable everywhere. And the magic part? If you need to change the brand color, you change it in that one spot and your entire site updates instantly. And what's cool is that variables play by the same cascade rules we already know. So in this example, the outer box 2 sets a variable for the box color. The inner box 4 just inherits it. But box 3 decides, nope, I'm going to be different, and it overrides that variable with its own local value. This gives you this awesome mix of global consistency and local control.
By changing a single variable, just like this, -accent color, you can completely flip the theme of a component or an entire website. This is the exact mechanism behind modern light modes and dark modes, and it is incredibly efficient.
The other key superpower is media queries. This is the cornerstone of all modern responsive design. A media query is basically just an if statement for your CSS. It lets you say, if the screen is at least 500 pixels wide, then apply these specific styles. This is how a website can look and feel perfectly at home on a tiny phone, a tablet, and a giant desktop monitor.
So how are people actually writing CSS on major projects today? Well, a really popular philosophy has emerged called utility-first CSS, with frameworks like Tailwind CSS pretty much leading the charge. This quote from Tailwind's own documentation really captures the whole philosophy. The idea is to style elements directly in your HTML, using a huge set of pre-built single-purpose utility classes instead of going off and writing a bunch of custom CSS all the time.
Let's just compare the two. The traditional way is on the left. You create a custom class name, like .card, and then you define all of its styles in a separate CSS file. The utility-first way is on the right. You compose the style directly in the HTML using all these little descriptive classes, like P4 for padding, rounded LG for the border radius, and shadow MD for a box shadow. Now, this is a trade-off. Let's be really clear about that. Your HTML is definitely going to get more cluttered with classes, but the benefits can be huge. Your final CSS file is often tiny because you're just reusing the same utilities everywhere. And maybe the best part for a lot of developers, you never have to waste time inventing semantic class names like .userProfileCard with avatar ever again. And this brings us to a fundamental question, a kind of philosophical divide in web development. What's more important to you? Keeping your HTML file clean and semantic, or keeping your CSS file small and super manageable? There's no single right answer, but how you answer that question for yourself will fundamentally shape how you decide to style things on the web.